Unessay project, The Truth Behind Malaria. What is malaria and what causes it? Malaria is a vector-borne disease caused by a single-cell parasite called Plasmodium. There are several species of the parasite Plasmodium. These are P. falciparum, P. vivax, P. ovale, and P. malariae. P. falciparum and P. vivax are the two that cause most of the cases of malaria. The parasite infects female Anopheles mosquitoes when they feed on the blood of a person infected with malaria parasites. Once in the mosquito's body, the parasites multiply and migrate to the salivary glands, ready to infect a new person when the mosquito next bites. Malaria is not contagious, unlike a common cold is. Early symptoms can include fever/flu-like symptoms, chills, headaches/muscle aches, nausea, and vomiting. If malaria is not treated quickly, the infection can become severe, and symptoms of this can include kidney failure, seizures, mental confusion, coma, and even death. The first stage of the malaria life cycle is that when an infected female mosquito feeds on the blood of a human being, parasites called sporozoites are injected into the person's bloodstream. From the infection site, the parasites travel directly to the liver, and if the human host is pregnant, they can travel to her unborn child. When the sporozoites travel to the liver, they mature there for about 6 days. There are no symptoms yet. If the human host is pregnant and the sporozoites travel to the unborn child, they can cause fetal loss, premature delivery, delivery of low-weight infants, and growth retardation. These sporozoites then divide rapidly, each producing 200 merozoites, which then burst from the liver cells and go infect red blood cells. These merozoites continue to develop further before they burst from the infected red blood cells to go infect other red blood cells. Once the number of parasites has grown in the bloodstream, the infected individual starts to experience symptoms. The malaria life cycle is completed when another uninfected mosquito feeds on the original infected person. The parasites further develop within the mosquito, causing it to become an infected vector before being injected into another human host. This is when the cycle restarts. Malaria is most prevalent where and why? Malaria depends mainly on climatic factors such as temperature, humidity, and rainfall. Malaria is mostly transmitted in tropical and subtropical areas. Temperature is critical because when below 68 degrees, Plasmodium falciparum cannot complete its growth cycle in the Anopheles mosquito and then cannot be transmitted. Even in some tropical areas, transmission will not occur. At very high altitudes, during colder seasons in some areas, in deserts excluding the oases, and in some countries where transmission has been interrupted through successful control and elimination programs. In cooler regions, however, P. vivax might be more prevalent because it is able to survive at cooler temperatures. There are approximately between 300 and 500 million cases each year and around 2 to 3 million deaths. The majority of the deaths are children between the ages of 1 and 5 in sub-Saharan Africa. In areas such as Western Europe and the United States, economic development and public health measures have succeeded in eliminating malaria. Impacts malaria has. Because malaria occurs mostly in poorer tropical and subtropical areas of the world with scarce resources and low socioeconomic stability, there have been few efficient malaria control activities. The most vulnerable people are young children who have not developed partial immunity to malaria and pregnant women whose immunity is decreased during the pregnancy. Malaria also causes devastating costs to not only individuals but the governments as well. Costs to individuals and their families include purchase of drugs for treating malaria at home, expenses for travel to and treatment at dispensaries and clinics, lost days of work, absence from school, and expenses for preventive measures. Costs to governments include maintenance, supply and staffing in health facilities, purchase of drugs and supplies, public health interventions against malaria, such as insecticide spraying or distribution of insecticide-treated bed nets, lost days of work with resulting loss of income, and lost opportunities for joint economic ventures and tourism. Direct costs have been estimated to be at least $12 billion per year. The cost and lost economic growth is many times more than that. Origins of malaria in primates. African great apes have at least 12 of the Plasmodium species living inside of them, some of which serve as a source for human infection. Plasmodium falciparum emerged following the transmission of a gorilla parasite, perhaps within the last 10,000 years, while Plasmodium vivax emerged from an ancient parasite lineage that infected humans and apes in Africa. One hypothesis, popular until about 10 years ago, suggested that humans and chimpanzees acquired P. falciparum-like infections from their common ancestors, and that these parasites had co-evolved with their respective host species for millions of years. In contrast, P. vivax was believed to have emerged in Southeast Asia following the transmission of a Macaque parasite to humans. However, the discovery of parasites closely related to P. falciparum and P. vivax in wild living chimpanzees, bonobos, and western gorillas has contradicted these theories, indicating that both human pathogens emerged much more recently from parasites infecting African apes. Although the origins of P. malariae, P. ovale have not yet been fully deciphered, all of these also have closely related chimpanzee, bonobo, or gorilla parts. Myths about malaria. Number 1. I didn't hear any mosquitoes, so I couldn't have been bitten. The female Anopheles mosquito is small and noiseless. She often doesn't leave a mark either. Many people believe that they don't get bitten by mosquitoes, especially if they don't hear the buzzing. Number 2. I have had malaria, so I am immune. The misconception regarding immunity and malaria puts many people traveling to malaria areas at risk. There are those who believe that once they have had malaria, they will be immune, similar to the measles situation, but this is not the case. Number 3. Malaria isn't fatal. Malaria can be fatal. Not every case of malaria is fatal. In fact, the majority are not if treated in time, but if not treated in time, they can kill. Number 4. I'm traveling in dry season, so mosquitoes won't be around. In tropical regions that have a wet and dry season, there's a slight fluctuation in mosquito activity, but that doesn't mean they aren't still active year-round, and that doesn't mean you are immune from being bitten in one season over another. Although mosquitoes are more active in the wet season, you are still at risk of being bitten during the dry season. Here are my sources, and thank you for listening to my presentation.